To Judicial Dollars and Cents, brought to you by Anders Virtual CFO Services team from all across the United States. I'm John Scott, and in each episode, we'll shine a light on the financial side of the legal world, turning law firm numbers into impact-driven stories. From taxes and profitability to practice growth and leadership, we sit down with law firm innovators who are shaping the future of the profession. Let's dive in, right here on Judicial Dollars and Cents. Welcome back to Judicial Dollars and Cents, where we break down the financial and operational realities behind running a successful law firm. I'm John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services, and today we have a great guest, Justin Chopin, founder of the Chopin Law Firm, a Louisiana-based personal injury firm built on accountability, transparency, and an unwavering focus on people, clients, and team alike. Justin, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, John. Thanks for having me. That's the best introduction I've ever had. Unwavering.
Unwavering.
I know that's great because I know we didn't write that. I was like, that's that complimentary. I was like, who wrote that? Hey, I appreciate that. I do. We are unwavering.
I like to start with people's origin stories, but yeah. I think because you approach your law firm like a business, I want to focus on your origin story, but then what was that aha moment where you realized, hey, I'm great at my craft, but this really is a business and I want to grow and scale and treat it like a business?
Yeah. Well, so for me, it wasn't one aha moment. It's been many moments of little small, like, I don't think I don't think I'm doing this right. And then over time, these little small decisions, have made a larger impact. And now I look back and you can say like, oh, aha. One of the ones when we talk about business is coming to terms with the fact that I'm just like a lawyer, like everybody else. I have a law degree. I have a bachelor's of arts in psychology. I have never taken a business class. I do not have an MBA. Where I went to college, they didn't have an MBA program where I went to school. They have one now. And so what that means is because I started my firm from scratch, I wore every hat here. There's not one job here that I didn't have. I was a receptionist. I was the paralegal. I was the trial lawyer. I was the associate. I was the IT guy. And I was intake and I was the bookkeeper. And I'm a very piss poor bookkeeper. I can make sure I don't overdraw the account. I can do that. I can record my checks. I'm much better at this than my wife. Don't get me started on that. But when it comes to bookkeeping on a 7-figure business, in those days, I don't know. I didn't even know what it means. I still don't know what it means. We're like, well, it's on the books. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? What books? I truly, when my CPA said, he's like, well, we got to get a set of books for you. Like, I thought it was going to be like an actual book. I was like, well, where is it? Let's see it. So coming to terms with the fact that's like, look, why would I know that? I was a defense lawyer for a million years. We had an entire, bookkeeping department in my defense firm, and I knew one of their names, maybe, and very rarely would have any need or reason to interact with them. I simply did my work. I kept my time, and then I submitted it, and then I don't know what happened after that. So starting the law firm, a lot of these things, we weigh like, what are you really good at? And what's a good use of your time? And what are you really bad at? And what is a bad use of your time? And I will tell you candidly, I was the bookkeeper here up until 2023. So for a long time, we started in 2015. So for 8 years, I was, or 7 years, I suppose, depending when it fell, I was the bookkeeper. And I remember my law partner telling me, he's like, Justin, you're the most overpaid, underqualified bookkeeper in the history of business. And so when I did this little exercise as to like, how much time in a day do I spend doing bookkeeping? How much time in a week? How much time in a month? And then we're like, do I get any energy out of it? Do I enjoy doing it? Things like that. I realized pretty quickly, like, oh, this is not for me. And so that's not an aha moment, but that exercise was, but it's just one of many, where I've had to learn over the years when to kind of hire someone else to do it, either because I hate it, sucks, or I'm no good at it, or I am good at it. I am very good at intake. And I do enjoy doing it, but it's really not the best use of my time. And just because you enjoy doing it and you're good at it doesn't mean it's not still holding you back.
Right. And so many people hold on to those things because they are good at it, but they're limiting their ability to generate revenue because it's beneath their skill set. Yeah, you're good at intake, but you could get someone else to do the intake and then you can handle more client matters. And you're also right that most attorneys don't have the background of accounting and finance to set up books and records. And I get it. When you're starting out and you're small, you want to hold on and keep a lid on costs. So you do your own bookkeeping. You probably made a few mistakes along the way, but either hiring or outsourcing that function can allow you to do higher level things. So tell me about the growth in your firm and how you view that. You started in 2018, 15.
I started in
And
2015.
now today,
Yeah, so I started in 2015. It was me, a couple of cases in my home office, which was supposed to be a nursery, and I just reinvested 100 cents on the dollar, month over month, year over year. Reinvesting in myself, reinvesting in the law firm, and the opportunity. And now we have 30 employees. We have one main office. We're looking this year to build satellites. We have virtual assistants in the Philippines. We have a full intake team. I'm not going to call it a department yet. I feel like we get one more person and it's a department. And we have 5 different teams of lawyers, set up. They're set up in little teams. We have a partner, an associate, and then they have paralegals and legal assistants. And so, it's hard to look at like, when did you grow? Because we've had so much going on, just naturally. We had COVID, right? And then a year after COVID, we got hit with a massive hurricane, which changed the law firm in a lot of ways. And so I'm always like, wait, no, is that before COVID or after COVID? No, that was before COVID. That was after Hurricane Ida. So, but I would say we've been on an upward trajectory from the start. When I first started, I would look at money like this. I'd say, okay, what did I make this month? Okay, that's more than I would have made as a defense lawyer for this month. So we're okay. I'm not spending any of it, right? We're just investing over and over, until I got to a spot where we had enough money. Because that's the hard part about running a plaintiff's practice is it's really heavy cash flow. I finance everything, and so that's why a lot of times younger lawyers, they'll get a good case and they'll have to bring in someone to help them with it, and it's not always because they're like, oh, I don't know how to do it. It's because they can't finance it, or they're having to take out loan shark style lending to do it, and so I never wanted to do that. We used to boast, they're like, we're cash pay everything, we're self financed. We have a line of credit, we don't use it, and so but that's kind of I've rambled, but that's kind of been the growth. I think probably we did a 2x a couple of times, and so it will be interesting to see what this year has in store. We did a massive growth in 2023. I said for 2024, I just wanted to like chill a little bit on purpose. I thought people were getting fatigued with change and growth. And then 2025, was sort of a big year again. So I think this year, but in a lot of ways, I thought 2025 was sort of setting the stage for this year. So knock on wood, I hope I'm right. But it's kind of fun to just watch this kind of grow over time. And then it's funny because I'm not the bookkeeper, I'm not the intake specialist, I'm not the paralegal or the receptionist, and I'm not the associate or anything else. And so a lot of times I'm just like, all right, well, I don't even know what am I even doing here today? I got a whole marketing team, and I just kind of come in and out as necessary. And it's still a little weird at the end of the day. You don't have that same sense of like, how much did you get done today, the way you did, or the way I did for many years. It's more fluid, but it's fun. It's fun to be part of the process. And I'll say this about the growth. At first, everybody in the firm was really uncomfortable about it. A lot of grumbling, a lot of like, too much change too fast. And then we just did a year-end survey. And so now we're like corporate as hell. So we did a year-end survey. Tell me what you liked. Tell me what you didn't like. What are you most excited about? What do you, all those sorts of things. And I'd say half the people all said the same thing. What are you most excited about? They're most excited to see what's next in the growth trajectory.
Wow.
And that's so cool. I was like, wow, that is a marked shift. In fact, almost everybody said that except for like one. That's fine. You're always going to have one. But it was a marked shift from perspective. And so it seems like they're enjoying it as much as I am.
That's great. It seems like you got the right people in the right seats on the bus too. That's awesome. Hey, so in a PI firm, we focus on profit-focused accounting, which means we look at financial and non-financial drivers to predict the future and forecast. And it's a little more difficult in a PI contingent fee environment, but it's certainly doable. Do you have a handle on forecasting over the next 12 weeks, 6 months, and a year based on your cases inventory?
Yeah, I've never been good at forecasting income. It's because it's not reliable revenue. And so it's just something I've always struggled with when people say, well, what's your anticipated forecast for this year? This year? Are you kidding me? I have no idea. I know historically, generally what we do. I know what it costs to run the place. That I've got down to a T. But forecasting what the revenue is, I still kind of do some old-fashioned things when it comes to that. When a lawyer settles a case, you don't have to go ring a bell, but like we have a Teams channel called Settlement Reporting, just so I can keep an eye on like what's coming in, making sure that somebody is settling something. I oftentimes will tell the guys, look, it costs the same amount of money to run this place, whether you're settling cases or not, right? So one way or another, we're paying that money out the door. So you need to go settle some cases if you enjoy being a lawyer here. Otherwise, even a very healthy law firm can't support too many months, of no revenue. And so, but when it comes to forecasting, no, I don't feel confident in any of our abilities to forecast on our models. I know how many cases I have open. I know how many cases are in litigation. I know generally the lifeline of a case and how long it may take. But I also know some lawyers move cases a lot faster than others, and so I got a lawyer who settled things on the quick, and I got a lawyer who's like case dragged on for years. And so there's so many variables without any control groups that I've never really been able to wrap my hands around.
Yeah, and that really hasn't been our experience with PI firms, especially if they have the right case management system and can assign a value to those cases. So now you have this inventory of cases, and based on type of case, probably the life expectancy or the duration, and you can set milestones as to where they are in that case. And we know that, MVAs are going to settle quicker. Sometimes they go to trial, but we're going to get some cash right around a trial date set. And we really kind of excel in that area of helping people forecast that cash position. But I love the fact that, especially early on, you took the position of holding on to that cash and reinvesting in the business. And that's really kind of foreign to a lot of attorneys, because they get to year end and they look at the cash balance, they go, whoop, take it out. And then they spend 2 or 3 months paying off the line of credit in the next year. And it's a struggle.
Yeah, I don't do that. I don't do that. And that's the nature of being in a growth pattern too. I think, it's very difficult to suck out the profits and be in a growth pattern at the same time. It's one or the other, in my opinion, unless you're insanely profitable, but or you're doing all the work, really, if you're doing all the work, you can do that. Right. If you're a solo and you're comfortable being a solo, then you'll have a better handle on receivables and your overhead will be lower. But we're an advertising firm. So, we spend, I think this year we're forecasted to be anywhere from 3 to 4 million in advertising. And so because of that, we're a higher volume practice. So it's very difficult. If you suck the profits out, and you're going to have a hard time, with that growth. So even just this year, I know what I want to do this year in terms of traditional marketing. So I spent all of last year, siphoning the funds out or the profit, to make sure that this year is covered. And so a lot of times I kind of do that. I'll escrow, for lack of a better term, to make sure that the firm is, has a good foundation. But yeah, I got some good advice early on from another lawyer. I had asked him, I said, when do you pay yourself? And he said, my daughter had just been born. And he said, on your daughter's first birthday, maybe look at the books and think, can I pay myself? He's like, don't do anything. And so I really took that to heart. That made sense to me. That again there'd be no reason for me to know how to manage cash, like that at a law firm. I got a little lucky in that 3 cases I had been holding on to for a long time, had finally hit the first summer of the law firm. And so that kind of jump started, some of the stuff. And, what I did very early on, which is a little bit different than what I just said I did, but we focused very much on debt. And so that's why I'm able to reinvest all the time, because I live with no debt. And so for the first 2 or 3 years, pretty much like all law loans, they had to get paid off. My wife's law loans, they had to get paid off. The house isn't paid off, but it's very manageable. But I have the same house note in a new house that I had when I had like a little bachelor house, when I first started when I was young. So we don't have credit card debt, and my car is paid for, and so I'm a big believer in chipping away at all that debt. And now when you're not making payments to, the various finance companies, now you have a really good sense of like, okay, what do I actually need? Not what do I want? Everybody wants to be rich. Everybody does, but what do I need? And is that realistic? Can we be there, on this and stuff? So, and so that's kind of how I did it. And that advice kind of came to me at the right time. I took it to heart, and I've done it every single year. And I think that that's really, if anyone was like, what's the secret? And I was like, that's the secret. Is you gotta, you have to treat yourself like an immigrant in a lot of ways. Starve yourself, reinvest, so that the next generation, has a better life. And so that's really what we're doing is we're reinvesting, because I'm not so much worried about where I was at 40. I'm more worried about like, where are we going to be at 50? Where are we going to be at 60? But we're laying all the foundation now. So.
I love your approach to cash flow and debt. And if my kids listen to this episode, they will hear me in your words, because there are good uses of debt, like a mortgage on your home, but sure. Credit card debt, if you can't pay it off at the end of the month, you didn't need to buy it. So I want to go back to the teams that you've set up where there's a partner and some associates and intake people. What metrics do you look at? How do you judge the effectiveness of those teams or evaluate their performance?
Percent revenue. That to me, it's like either you're meeting your revenue targets or you're not. Okay. Everybody gets to participate in intake. The cases are pretty evenly spread out. We've got fresh cases coming in every day. We've got old cases, matriculating out. Everybody has the same support. So in that regard, everything's uniform, right? Everyone has the same resources, and they have all the resources they need. We have the more software than you could possibly imagine. We can track every metrics at the firm. We have awesome support staff, awesome paralegals. Our intake is top notch. We have a department, for marketing solely focused on like, what can we do better? I've got a director of operations where she and I will I spend all energy thinking like, what can I do to make this better than before? What process can I put in place? What tools do they need? Where should we invest in AI or whatever it may be? So these things are constant across all teams. Now the answer is, can you deliver? Can you get a good result on all the cases? And so I'm very upfront on what it costs to be a lawyer, to sit in a chair. It's bare minimum. You need to be getting $500,000 in legal fees. And it's probably more than that, but bare minimum. So that means you've got to settle, anywhere, our cases are usually 40%, 35%, depending on the type of case it is, for our attorney's fees. So you say 37.5%, you can extrapolate that, and you're like bare minimum, you need to be doing like 1.5 in business. It's just easy generic numbers. And that's it. You're either making it or you're not. And so I think there are always variables, but I think most of it is constant. And I have one partner here who is a director of associate development, and his job is to mentor the younger lawyers to get them to that point. So that and it could be anything. He'll give me feedback every week and be like, all right, we met, and this is what I'm seeing. Either he needs to do this more, he doesn't have enough cases, we need to spread this out more, or the stat, and so it's all on profitability. That's all I want to hear about, on that. So that's how we measure it. We don't bill by the hour. We're only on contingency. So either you settled the case or you didn't, and you got the whole year. If the whole year you're in the red, and then on December 28th, you hand me a check for, $1 million. Well, buddy, you did great. Don't worry about it. But it starts over on January 1.
Well, clearly we'd like that cash flow throughout the year, but okay. You've redeemed yourself on the last day of the year.
That's right. I mean, it is not ideal. It is the most stressful way to get paid. Typically, that's not what happens.
Right.
We're pretty steady throughout the year. We have spikes and peaks and valleys. Like September, from a cash flow perspective, sucks. It's always been horrible. Every September, I don't know why, I'm miserable. October is always great. Probably the reason. We find October, November are generally pretty good. December is pretty run of the mill. That old kind of wives' tale of like insurance companies want to clear out their books, and so December is this busy month. I don't know that that's necessarily true. I find October is when insurance companies are really looking to be like, okay, what can we get off the books? And so it's very rarely, are we doing deals, after Christmas? I mean, honestly, by mid-December, I think operations on our side, as well as the insurance company side, have kind of like really subsided. But ideally we would want, a steady flow, because as I say, the expenses are steady.
Right.
Nobody's saying like, well, just you can pay the rent at the end of the year, right? Rent's due on the 1st, whether you're making money or not.
So you mentioned that you're an advertising firm, and I want to go down a couple paths. What type of advertising do you think is currently working the best? And what is your reaction? Morgan & Morgan has been in your area for much longer than it's been expanding elsewhere. But how does that impact what you do, or does it?
So the first question, we have billboards, we have TV, traditional. We have a heavy social media presence. And then we have our largest line item is our digital advertising budget. It's very difficult to say which works. I would say the digital probably per dollar works the best. And partly because there's a direct attribution, right? So if you're spending money on digital ads, it's very easy to track whether it yielded a result or it didn't. but what can happen with digital is if you become too dependent on it, then you're not very secure in your position, and new people can come into the market and they can edge you out. So Morgan & Morgan is the best example of that. So he buys his, ad buy from like law.com or excuse me, injury.com. And I think he has another, and they're just buying on a national scale. I don't even know. I can't even really ascertain like what are they spending in my local market because of the way that they buy their spend. But I do know I can look at my overlap rate and say, all right, how often is injury.com impacting me, and how often are they ahead of me, and stuff like that. And so if you're just 100% in digital, I think you're in the danger zone. And then the question is, do you really have a brand? Do you really have an identity as a business? And I'll give a great example. So we represented this family who son was like, had the dad's gun and was showing it to his friend, shoots the friend survives. But not for nothing. It was like Dutch shot, in the back bedroom. And so it was a suit against the parents of the minor, and their homeowners had insurance to cover, for this child's injuries. Great result. There's no question about it. We were able to, put plenty of money in their pocket. They were very happy. We were happy to be able to do the work. We felt good about the case. Nobody's going to jail, right? I mean, like it was an accident. I think it was a big lesson for everyone, parents and children alike on both sides. Fast forward 2 years, and their house is damaged in a hurricane. That client hired another attorney to represent them in their hurricane claim. And that attorney referred the case to us, asking them to help, asking us to help them out. And I saw the name come across as a referral. I was like, that's great. And I was like, wait a second. Aren't these the guys that we represented for that gunshot? And that's one of many of the small aha moments of like, my God, the problem is they don't even know who we are. We've spent all this energy and time, working on the best result for our clients, and then our clients walk out the door. They don't even know who we are. I'll see people will leave a 5-star review and they'll be like, "Oh, Mr. Chopin was great." And I was like, "That's not even my name." It still happens, And so if you're not going to try and establish, if you're going to advertise, I should say. Because if you're not advertising, the rules of the game are slightly different. If you're going to advertise, I think then you need to establish a brand, if for no other reason, so that when the next case comes, they actually even know your name and they know who you are. I think this is going to be particularly important as we're moving into the future, because what I saw is this major shift in the market during COVID, and it wasn't. COVID didn't dictate this. COVID gave us the tools and the excuse to implement what people were already wanting to begin with. And that was less contact with their lawyer. They don't want to come down. So before COVID, the deal was this. Everyone knows when a client would call and say, I want to meet with Mr. Chopin, my paralegal would tell them 10 o'clock. That's the time to meet me. You just say 10 o'clock. And if I got a line of people out the door to meet me at 10 o'clock, awesome. Because I know I won't. I know by and large, most of them won't show up. Then, that was the old way. And then we would sit down at this table where I'm sitting right here, and I would go through and talk to them about their case, and I'd get a retention agreement, and we would go through it together. They would sign it. I'd give them a copy, and then out the door they went. And I'd be like, all right, well, we'll be calling you in a couple of days, making sure, checking on you. Are you going to the doctor? Do we have all the information we need, et cetera, et cetera? Then, what about all those people who couldn't come to the office? Well, those were a problem. Frequently, especially in the early days, in the young days of the firm, me or one of the other lawyers, we would go out to them, right? So you see lots of lawyers say that. You don't have to worry about coming to us. We'll come to you, right? Because we know you can't get down here, right? Like I was in a car accident. My car's totaled. Great. Drive on down to the office. So it's not so simple. So then we would hire somebody, because after a while, I was like, I don't want to go to your house, in like a really bad neighborhood at 5 or 6 o'clock. I got kids, that they need to have dinner. It's getting late. And so we had this guy. I don't know where we found. I truly don't even know where we found this guy. But when someone would call, we'd be like, okay. They're like, well, can you come to me? And I was like, look, I can't come to you, but I got this guy. He'll come to you. It's not like truly, if you say the word runner, it's a very, derogatory. He's not running the cases. They're coming to us and we're saying, hey, can you help us, make this connection? You go drive to their neighborhood, give them all the paperwork, explain it all to them, have them sign it, and come give us a copy, and then we'll call them. It was horrible, absolutely horrible. The guy was atrocious. I had one client call me and she says, well, I like you. Really don't like that guy. You shouldn't have that guy to go to anybody's house. That guy was awful. So I was like, oh, okay. So what COVID did was COVID gave us the reason to implement what was always available to us. And that was, we can text you all the things that you need. And so now when someone calls, they say, look, I've been injured. And they're like, great, sorry that that's happening, but we'd love to help you out. We will text you the link to our contract. You're going to sign with your finger. You get a copy. I get a copy. Boom. You go from intake to onboarding. You're going to get onboarded. Boom. You're assigned to an attorney. Attorney's going to take your case, and we're going to go from here. That was available in 2019. It was fine. You could have done that in 2019. You could have done it in 2018. COVID gave us the excuse to implement that. And I say this about I bring this up for marketing because I think it's really important. That means that someone could have been injured, hired us as their lawyer, had an awesome result, and has never seen our face, has never met us face to face, has never come down here, has never shook our hand, has never heard me pronounce our name, right? So they think it's Chopin or something like that. And that's the future of the practice. And it's not because we're doing it. Doesn't bother me at all. I got 3 conference rooms, about to build out a 4th conference room. Doesn't bother me at all. I'd love to have the clients come down. It's what the market is. We're meeting the market where it is. It's what the clients want. They don't want to come down here. They don't want to pay to park and come up here. It's a pain in the ass, right? And I get that. So if that's by the way, just where we are. That's not where the market's headed. That's where the market is. Where are we going to be in 5 years?
Right.
I think so frequently I've been saying to these guys lately, I said, look, our last opportunity is when they come to pick up a check. We'll give them a t-shirt, a little side man hug kind of thing, tell them thank you. And then off they go and they're happy. I think that's gone. My prediction is in the next 3 to 5 years, those are just going to be contactless payments. They're just going to get wired into their account. And then the only ones that are going to actually come in are the ones, for smaller settlements, maybe that are like, okay, I want my settlement check and I'm going to go cash it. But that's not the norm. And so if you're not going to have any client contact at all, face to face, then you're going to have to do more. And so I think in addition to, just taking care of your clients, staying in touch with them, reassuring them through the process, the other half of that is marketing. You're going to have to market yourself to your own clients. And that's the risk of just being a digital only practice.
Well, things are going to change so rapidly, especially with AI. And you're right. The pandemic, as painful as it was, took about 5 years of online and remote work and compressed it into 18 months. And we got good at it. I'm an old-fashioned guy. I like to walk down the hall and talk to a colleague.
Me too.
Now you hop on a Teams meeting. But what it has done, at least for the accounting profession, is if we need talent in a certain area, a tax manager, an audit partner, they don't have to be here. They can be anywhere in the world and do that work. And it probably works for you too. It gives you a little more freedom. You don't always have to be in Louisiana. You can work remotely, which is the ugly side of this, because you're always on, and that's not a good thing. But we'll adjust and get there.
Yeah, I mean, look, that being always on is no good.
Right.
That is something we did ourselves with the advent of the smartphone. I mean, I had the benefit of practicing law before that. And so, you know, it would wait until you get to the office. You know, we didn't even have a laptop. If you wanted a laptop, you had to like check one out for travel. So you really, when you left the office, you left the office. Now you might have been at the office longer. You know, right? I remember as a young lawyer, I was like 6 o'clock at night and I was like, well, I'm going to go. And my boss was like, where? I was like, well, I'm going to go home. He's like, why? I was like, because it's 6 o'clock at night. He's like, okay. I was like, I'm leaving because this sucks. I want to go home. Okay. I don't know what else you want me to say. So, but we did that to ourselves. But, you know, a lot of this, when we talk about COVID and the technology changes, I took my first deposition just like this, like you and I are, in 2011. That was almost 10 years before Zoom, anyone ever even heard of Zoom. So that's what this technology was really not that new. You know, if you had, now, to be fair, we had some pretty sophisticated AV equipment, but I had to depose some soybean farmers out in Missouri. And my boss said, well, I'm not paying to fly you out to Missouri. We just got this really expensive setup. And so I took my first deposition like that. Not my first deposition, excuse me, but I took the deposition that way. And that was the first time I had ever done it that way. I'll say it like that. So then, you know, that's why I said when COVID came, I was like, guys, none of this is new, right? It just forced us into this role. I agree with you. Like, so we could hire people nationwide. I can't hire lawyers necessarily that way, but certainly staff, certainly intake. We have 3, you know, virtual assistants in the Philippines that I think are phenomenal. 2 of them are lawyers. They're not practicing law for us. One of them's doing entirely back of house stuff, you know, and then the other one is operating as a full-time paralegal for 2 of our attorneys, and she's absolutely phenomenal, and she works our schedule and our time zone, and we really rely on her. And yeah, I mean, when we have a meeting, you know, she's there on Teams, and that's the difference. Though 10 years ago, that was not
right.
You know, only major companies would have had that. You know, you would have to be a massive company to be able to have remote workers. And so I talked to a lawyer recently. She said, you know, that she likes to hire her intake team, you know, in like the mountain time zone, because it kind of bridges better. You know, and they have, you know, the accents right. There's no accent. I think that's an interesting take. My people are all here. We're still in a building mode in my mind, and so we're not too spread out. I, like you, I like to walk down the hallway, and you know, we don't really. So we temper all that with saying, well, I don't really have a work from home policy. I like everybody to be here and collaborate and learn, but we can service our clients anywhere we want.
Hey, this has been a great conversation, but we are going to have to wrap things up. I want to ask you a question. If the next time I get back to your area of the world,
all right,
I'd like a restaurant recommendation that would not be something a tourist would typically go to, but would have really great food.
Okay, sure. Well, so New Orleans, we got all the restaurants. Everyone's heard of them. You know, some of ours, you know about Commanders, or people know about Arno's. But I think if you want really phenomenal food that locals like to go to, I have 2 restaurants by Donald Link. One is Herb Saint and one is Pesh. I think they're totally different vibes, as the kids like to say. Herb Saint's your white linen tablecloth kind of place, and Pesh is more like wood tables. Both restaurants are my absolute favorite in New Orleans. I've never had a bad meal at either one of them. When I go to Herb Saint, I will get the special fish of the day, even whatever it is, even when they describe it. If I'm like, man, that sounds gross, I'll have that. You know, I'm hearing it, I'm like, God, I hate all that stuff. And I'm like, I'll take it because I know it's going to be great. And then there's one other, this one's really off the radar. And it's called Saint Germain. And it's in like a very progressive sort of neighborhood. It's our St. Claude, and where it's like kind of, I wouldn't say it's up and coming. It's a very old neighborhood, but it's got some revitalization. And that's one of the, I don't know what you would call that. Like there's no menu, right? So it's like a prefix tasting menu, and you're paying like a ticket more so than and I think that if someone had asked me like, what's the best meal you've ever had that you can remember in New Orleans, I would say Saint Germain.
That's awesome. Thank you. Hey, and if folks want to get a hold of you, what's your website?
Yeah. So we cornered the market on Chopin. So if you want to get a hold of us, it's just chopin.com. No other famous person's ever been named Chopin. And you can email me, Justin at chopin.com. Check us out online. You can call us at 504-500-8000. Happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Well, thank you again, Justin. And thank you all for listening. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to subscribe, like, and share it with any other firm owner that you think could benefit from this conversation. Until next time, this is John Scott with Anders Virtual CFO Services and your host of Judicial Dollars and Cents. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for joining us on Judicial Dollars and Cents, presented by Anders Virtual CFO Services. If you found value in today's conversation, be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you get your podcast. To learn more about how Anders helps law firms strengthen their financial foundations and drive growth, visit anderscpa.com. Until next time, keep making smart decisions that make perfect sense.